In this video, we are going to discuss how to play the fried liver attack, which is usually played from the white side. It is very aggressive opening, and if your opponent doesn't know how to react to it, you're already going to get a winning position. So I don't want to waste any further time, so let's quickly jump into the video. So, we are playing with the white pieces. We start the game with 1e4. Our opponent plays e5. We develop the knight, hitting the pawn. Our opponent develops the knight, protecting the pawn, and we play the move bishop to c4, simply playing a standard level of chess. Our idea is to simply castle. And here many players like to play the move knight to f6, developing the knight and also hitting the pawn on e4. And here many players like to play the move d3. But we are going to play the move knight to g5, simply attacking the f7 pawn. And here after knight g5, opponent plays the move d5. We capture the pawn, and here black is having, if an opponent doesn't know how to reply to it, or he has not seen this position even once, he's going to capture the pawn. But now we are going to simply sack the knight on f7, king f7, queen to f3 check. This opening is known as the fried liver attack. Here black is forced to play the move king e6, because if you try to move the king, I can simply capture the knight. I'm pawn up and also threatening mate. Black have to play king e6 in order to protect the piece. We play knight c3, double attack. Black plays knight to b4, protecting the knight and also threatening knight into c2. We simply short castle, and here black plays the move c6, simply protecting the knight on d5. This is the best way for black to continue the game, or else white is simply going to crush black by playing the move on the next move a3 and the game is over, followed by attacking the knight. So black plays c6, and now we play the move d4, simply opening up the center because the king is very weak in the center. So here, if black captures the pawn, we can simply give a check, and now it's over. Black king move, we can give a check, we can capture the knight, we can give the rook check. And if king captures the bishop, rook d1, and it's game over, b3 is coming up. For example, after h6, b3 check, takes, check, and the game is over. And if black plays move like knight into c2, still queen f7 check is winning. And yeah, it's mate, you can't do much. So this is what happens if black plays king into bishop in this particular position. If black plays the move knight d5, we can still play the move rook d1, simply threatening to capture the pawn. And after pawn takes knight, simply queen check, still we can capture the knight with the rook, and we win the queen and eventually the game. So this is what happens if black plays the move e into d4. So now let's try to discuss what happens if black plays the move knight into c2, capturing the pawn, hitting the rook and the pawn. And here we are going to play the move d into e5. Now what's the idea? White wants to play the move rook to d1, putting more pressure on knight on d5. Black captures the knight, black captures the rook, and here we simply play the move rook d1, increasing more pressure. And now black can't really handle it. So after knight c2, we can simply capture the knight, pawn takes, rook takes. The game is over. We want to capture the queen, threatening a discover attack, and the game is over. Even the engine suggests black choose just its mate in 4. So black can't really do much, it's game over. So this is what happens if black plays the move knight into d5. So now let's try to discuss what happens if black goes for the right approach, which is to play the move knight to a5, which is the best move and the only move. We play the move bishop to b5 check. The best way to is to play the move c6. If you try to play bishop d7, white is more than happy to play the move queen e2 or even capture the bishop. There is no problem at all. But the main move is to play the move c6, hitting the bishop. We capture the pawn, pawn takes, and now we are going to play the move queen to f3. Basically, the bishop cannot be captured because we can capture the rook, and we are better in this position. So here I've taken two moves in this position, bishop b7 and bishop e7. Bishop e7 is the best move. So first let's try to discuss what happens after bishop b7. We pull the bishop back because black is already preparing to capture the bishop because the bishop is protected by the knight, hitting the queen. So we simply pull the bishop back, bishop to d6, protecting the pawn. We simply play the move d3. Now what's the idea? First of all, we are opening up the bishop. Second, we are not allowing black to push the pawn in the future. And also we can make a room for the knight to go on e4. d3 is a very interesting move. Short castle, we also castle as well. And after c5, finally opening up the bishop, which is protected by the knight, we play the move knight to e4. Knight takes, pawn takes, and the position is good for white. There is no problem at all. White can continue the game via playing knight c3, knight to d5, bishop e3, or yeah, rook d1. The game is pretty comfortable for white. There is no particular problem, and I guess white is already better because black is having two weak pawns and black is even up and down. So this is what happens if black plays the move bishop to b7. So now let's try to discuss what happens if black goes for the main approach, which is bishop e7. We simply come back with the bishop to d3. Now what is the idea? Because the bishop on d3 is the best square for the bishop. Because after bishop e7, if you try to make a short castle, black can play the move like bishop g4, where we are kind of forced to take on c6, and black is having too much compensation for the two pawns down because every piece is developed. So I don't like this particular idea. That is the reason after bishop e7, I recommend you to play the move bishop to d3, which is the best move. Basically, we are again not allowing black to play any kind of e4 pawn push in the future. Short castle, we also castle, and here again to move bishop b7 and h6. If black plays the move h6, we simply come back with the knight, and after knight into e4, queen into e4, white is already pretty happy hitting the pawn. The knight is kind of misplaced. White wants to play the move b3, bishop b2, knight c3, and white is good to go. And white is better already, to be true. And if black finds the best move, which is knight d5, we are going to simply play the move knight to g3. Because after knight to d5, black's idea is to play the move f5. And if we move the knight, he's going to play the move e4. So we are basically going to lose piece. That's the reason. We cover the f5 square by playing knight g3, covering any pawn push. Knight to b4. Black wants to go for the bishop because, as I said always, bishop pair are always stronger. So black goes for the bishop pair. We play b3. Knight takes, pawn takes, and now black plays bishop a6, which is the best move. You hit the pawn two times and you can't fully defend it. But here we are simply going to play the move rook e1, simply counter-attacking the pawn. And here black happily captures the pawn. But we can simply play the move knight c3. Our idea is to capture the pawn. We cannot capture the pawn instantly because after bishop f6 we lose a piece. So we play the move knight c3, f6, and now we can already jump in with the knight, come onto the light square, followed by knight f5, and our idea is to simply capture the bishop, which is extremely strong, followed by we can play the move bishop a3 in the future after a4. White is good in this position. There is no problem at all. And if black captures the pawn with the queen, we can capture the pawn with the rook. Queen takes, pawn takes, bishop to d8. You cannot play bishop f6 because the rook knight is hanging, followed by the bishop. So you must play the move bishop d8 in order to protect both the bishop and the knight. Now we can simply play the move bishop a3, hitting the rook, and the position is slightly better for white. So this is what happens if black goes for playing the move h6 in this position. So now let's try to discuss what happens if black goes for playing the move bishop to b7, putting the bishop onto a good square. Idea is to push the pawn and attack the queen. We play the move knight c3, simply developing the piece, c5, and now simply coming back with the knight. Knight takes, bishop takes, queen takes, and the position is already good, you can see. Black is having the weaknesses, whereas white is having no particular weaknesses. White just needs two moves, which is just to push the pawn, put the bishop, and that's it. Or even b3, bishop b2 also works. The position is extremely fine, white is already better, so there is no problem at all. You can definitely go for playing this opening. So this is what happens if your opponent plays the move bishop to b7. So yeah guys, that's it for today. We have covered everything in the fried lever attack. Even if you're facing top-notch grandmaster, you can still play out this opening. If you don't know, Hikaru Nakamura simply beat Fabiano Caruana by playing this particular opening. So yeah, this opening is already very interesting. Many players try to underestimate this particular opening, but you can actually play this opening even against strong players. You can definitely go and check it out. It's a must-play opening. So that's it for today. If you learned anything new, then make sure to like the video, share this video with everyone, and make sure to subscribe to our channel if you are new to our channel. I'm going to come up with these exciting videos like this. So till then, stay tuned and keep watching Oneshot Chess.